2. Okay. Welcome back to the Baseball Rundown. I'm here with Kurt. I'm here with Johnny this week. And I'm here with Josh this week. We got a smaller group, but that's okay. We're doing this on a Wednesday, which is not traditional, but entirely okay. So there is a lot going on this week. I'd like to talk about one thing real quick because I'm no longer a fan of the team. But the futility of it all is the A's are so bad since they've been in Sacramento. They're 11 under 500 in that AAA ballpark. The Tampa Bay Rays, who are currently playing in Steinbrenner Field, are above 500 at home. So before we get to the team reports, I want all honesty about this because I already know they're trying to do the expansion teams. This isn't about Tampa Bay. This is about baseball in general. This is for the commissioner. If you're the commissioner of baseball right now and you got two teams playing in minor league stadiums, what are you doing? Because another one is Miami, which we talked about a few weeks ago. They had an all-time low for attendance. I think it was against the Mets. Somebody. It was fairly recent. They had like 5,000 people in their entire stadium. Empty almost. But if you guys are in charge of baseball right now, and you see these three teams are not drawing fans, what do? I'm going to start with Kurt first. Go ahead.
I just don't know because, you assume that the situation with the Athletics and with the Rays is temporary. The Rays will be going back to the Trop next year, presumably. The Athletics, I don't know if they've broken ground yet in Las Vegas, but I've been hearing, it's a matter of days or weeks or whatever. I don't know what to do about Miami at this point. It's the ownership situation there has been awful ever since the team has been in Florida, and they've been there for over 30 years now. What do? Do you every time they think they've got a better owner, it just doesn't happen.
And
exactly. I don't know what's going to happen. How you guarantee that that's going to change.
And welcome in, Jesse. We were just we started the show, but we haven't quite gotten to that point yet where we started on the teams. I actually came up with a topic because of the three teams that have had issues so far this season, attendance-wise. The A's, it was always going to be that way. The Rays, we're going to have trouble because it's Steinbrenner Field. But my thing is now with Miami, because I just had Kurt go over it, and I'm just explaining the topic here. Miami drew such a little crowd. They had less than 5,000 fans there for a home game just this past week. So I'm gonna go to Johnny in a moment here, but the topic right now is, just to get things rolling, what do you do about these teams that cannot draw fans besides the ones that are in the minor league stadium because Miami is so futile? Johnny, go ahead.
My goodness, truth be told, this is a very tough nut to crack. I'll tell you that much. For the Marlins, they've been around for 30 years, and outside of those two World Series championship years where they drew okay, they just haven't been drawing that well. And truth be told, under Loria and their current ownership, they just haven't done much to invest in the product, their on-field product and whatnot, ever since 2003 for the Marlins. The A's, my goodness, a lot of this could have been handled better by both the ownership, the locales, and the league. All truth be told, it's just there are just a lot of moving parts to that thing, and the same thing goes for the Rays. Even in the 2 years that even in the 2008 season when they were in the World Series, they weren't drawing. They were drawing not that well either. So again, it's a really tough nut to crack.
And I appreciate the feedback on that as well. You and Kurt have both made very valid points because Miami was one of the last expansion teams. They were the fourth. They're only the fourth youngest team now behind the Diamondbacks, the Rays, which is even sadder because the Rays aren't even 30 yet, and they still can't draw anybody. Colorado's in the swamp heap right now, but they swept Miami, which is even that's who they were playing. They got swept.
Out.
Exactly.
It was in Miami where Colorado swept. Yikes.
Yeah. And that's the sad part. It's gotten to the point where it's so futile that the Marlins, who are better than them, got swept by the worst team currently in MLB history through, it seems like, 62 games. Josh, I'm going to go to you about the same thing, same situation. What do you do about the lack of attendance? Because the attendance is on the rise, but for 27 out of 30 teams, it seems like there's not a problem.
Well, and for these two teams that are playing in minor league ballparks, again, the ownership needs to wake up and see what's going on. I know it takes time to build a new stadium if that's what they're going for, but it seems to me like they didn't even have a backup plan for any of this. What they did was, they said, let's just pick a minor league ballpark and we'll go there. My second thought is, don't these teams have spring training facilities they could make use of at all? Anybody on the panel have a comment
They
for
do,
me?
but I think most of them are single A ballparks, which are even smaller.
Kurt is right on that, because I know Tampa Bay is already going to be stationed in Florida anyways, and the Yankees, Steinbrenner Field is the Yankees not even AAA, their spring training stadium. So that's the spring training field.
Well, it's one of those things. You think they could collaborate with another team? Say, can you help us out when you guys are on the road? Maybe can we play some games in your ballpark? But they haven't even done that. It's all these minor league stadiums.
Well, my 2 cents about that is this could have been handled a lot differently, but in the case of the Rays and the A's, their whole situation is chronically been a problem since 2005. Tampa Bay has had a stadium now before the hurricane hit for 27 years. They had a stadium all planned out and everything else. The only team that has had a stadium for longer than them is currently Miami, and they can't even draw there. So yeah, no, it's not a pretty picture, but if you keep shrinking down and everything, like the attendance ain't there, it's going to be a problem. Jesse, go ahead and give your piece on this.
I mean, you're right about the Tampa Bay Rays. They've always had a problem with attendance. Even that was always the topic of ESPN. You know, one thing is they don't have players that draw. You know, they don't have an Ohtani. They don't have an Aaron Judge. They don't have a superstar to compensate. But they don't even promote the players. I mean, where's the promotion of their roster? You know, with the star players. You know, it's like what's going on with the NBA. You know, with the ticket prices are going down because of the attendance. You know, all the great players from my era are already gone. You know, Chris Paul, we don't know if he's coming back. He's in his 40s. LeBron James is in the twilight of his career. You know, we got young players that don't have we got young players in both leagues that don't get the attention that the stars of yesterday got. You know, back in the day, you know, you would see the stars getting promoted in the 90s, you know. When it was the Braves, it was Smoltz, Maddox, Jones, Fred McGriff, you know. You don't see it, it's like those teams are either lazy or just don't care to put a product out on the field to make money.
And there you go. That's 5 valid points of view. And I know normally you guys would like to talk about your teams today, but I'd like to go in a different direction. Ownership, payroll, because I think about it this way. The 3 teams we just talked about are generally bottom 5 in baseball and payroll. And the A's were forced to get at least $100 million. But I always think about it this way. Ownership, front office, and lack of promotion. Because they got all these promotions, bobbleheads, days for the kids. And that was something else that I talked about previously. If you won't let kids run all 4 bases at a Sacramento game for these A's teams, you're really just blackballing these fans. Like, for the Mets, for instance. The Mets, they had Jose Iglesias. They had him do his own personal concert and everything. In the stadium. They signed a guy who hadn't played baseball in more than a year. And he goes and takes this team and he makes it exciting. Did the ownership cause problems for the Mets? No. The Wilpons have always been a decent set of people. I'd like to leave the floor to Kurt on this one for the Mets ownership to start off with and what they could do better and what they have been doing well.
Well, obviously, Steve Cohen's been a huge difference for the Mets since he took over a few years back. They are currently second. I'm looking at Baseball Reference right now in estimated payroll behind the Dodgers, and that makes a huge difference. But they're also creating more exciting product. As a result, the Mets have had, I'm looking at the year-over-year numbers for attendance. The Mets' attendance has jumped from 24,490 per game last year to 37,686. That's the largest year-over-year difference of any major league team, and it's nearly double the second-place team, which is the Detroit Tigers. So they've made a huge difference. By the way, one other little thing to throw in for the Athletics. The Athletics' attendance per game this year is 10,069. That is an increase over their last year in the Mausoleum in Oakland of 3,795 people. So they're actually drawing over 50% more in Sacramento in a AAA park.
Well, in all honesty about that, the owner is a moron. He owns all kinds of money. And the funny thing is, the Bally's stock, the Gap stock, have both pretty much collapsed. They've been plummeting with him at the helm. So that's the only reason they're getting more attendance is because these people in Sacramento have nothing better to do than sit out there in the summer.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, and I've said this before to the customers of my job. It's just like, if I wanted to go sit in the sun and get skin cancer for 3 hours, I'd do it in Oakland. I wouldn't do it in Sacramento. Because that's what it's supposed. That's how they got the name bleachers. You're going to get your skin bleached in the stands for 3 hours.
I'd actually do it in San Francisco. They have a lovely view looking over the bay.
And I went there a couple weeks ago. It is a beautiful view. So this is going to be an interesting one because Johnny's got two teams. And I know Seattle and LA are two completely different levels. So let's hear this.
All right, the Dodgers, no big surprise. They're in one of the largest markets, second only to New York, obviously, which is two teams. And LA kind of has two teams in the Angels, but it's a little bit to the east, but it's still in the main metropolitan locale. And not surprisingly, ever since the change in ownership a decade and change ago, they've cared about their on-field product as well as promoting their team as well as a whole. So it's not surprising that they've gone to the World Series quite a few times and have won 2 in the past 5. Now, for the Mariners, though, they experienced a change of ownership in 2016, and as of 2024, they are in the middle of the pack in the payroll department. However, the ownership group led by John Stanton seems to be only concerned about making money and not investing in the on-field products. So a lot of Mariner fans have taken issue with that sort of thing.
And that's exactly where I draw the line. Seattle and the A's are two similar fan bases where for 20 years, because Seattle had Ichiro, they had Raul Ibanez, they brought in Richie Sexson, they had Kenji Jojima there, they had Felix Hernandez there, Franklin Gutierrez, they had Mike Cameron, they had Junior before he got shipped out. Seattle had all kinds of talent. They just never seemed to build around it in the 2000s. That's why it hurt them so much now in the 2020s where they got guys like Julio Rodriguez to build around. They've got all this talent to build around like the Dodgers have. They've got money. But the thing is, if you're rooting for a team like I was for close to 30 years before they left, every time they got somebody good, they'd trade them. They'd release them. They'd let them go sign somewhere else, and then you wonder why the fans don't want to watch ball games. Now, here's a real interesting one, because if you got anything else, Johnny, go ahead.
And it's really kind of interesting to see what happens whenever a big star gets traded or leaves the team for whatever reason. It's just frustrating.
Well, the biggest one I think of right now, and I'll get to Josh and Jesse in a second, but Freddie Freeman. People forget how long Freddie Freeman was with Atlanta. 12 years. He gets them a World Series title. His agent screws him over. he was going to stay an Atlanta Brave for the rest of his career. His agent screwed him over. I know Mets fans already had to deal with Chipper Jones. They called him Larry. They hated his guts. But I don't think you can hate Freddie Freeman. That's why him leaving, that hurts. That hurt Atlanta a lot. I'm going to go over to Josh with Chicago because I know I talked about this with him off the air a bit, me and David and I, about the Ricketts family and everything else, and how their ownership has kind of it's not become the drizzling shits. It's because they're, excuse my language, but it's certain someone in their operations, and that's normally what leads to it is they throw a monkey wrench in there. So, Josh, go ahead.
Ownership. Well, and exactly. The Ricketts have actually good ownership, but they're at a point now. They got the World Series in 2016, but they haven't built on it. Now we're in a situation in 2023. We have a good manager. We have Craig Counsell. You have people you can build around like Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker. And what floored me is people in the front office made Pete Crow Armstrong an offer, and he turned them down because they severely lowballed him with the offer. And I'll tell this player is on the way to being superstar, and if they let him get away, it's going to be bad for the team because they're in a good place right now, but they need to spend money. Bottom line, if you want to keep your talent or get talent, spend money. From what I've been seeing in the last couple of years, I mean, the talent's there, but they're focusing on other things within the organization where they want to put their money, and your number one focus should be the baseball team.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing right now with Chicago is ever since they got Pico Armstrong, they've had the talent, and this is like their first time that they've been good again.
Absolutely.
Since 2021, and that's exactly what happens. Is like I've said before with Chicago, they had great players. They had Rizzo, who's now currently a free agent. The poor guy, after getting kneed in the head by Tatis with the post-concussion syndrome, possibly ending his career.
Well, look what they did in 2019. Look in 2019. They did a fire sale. They got rid of everybody. They got rid of Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Anthony Rizzo. I mean, they got rid of the core that built that World Series team. And it's taken them a while to get back to leading the division the last couple of years. And I hate to see that go down the drain because of poor front office decisions. Whoever is making them.
Well, sometimes it just takes one moron from accounting to say, hey, we can't afford this guy anymore. And then he goes off and does bigger and better things.
Yes, and that's my fear for Pete Crow Armstrong, because he knows at this point how good he is, and there are teams looking at him, and he's going to probably go take that higher offer because he got lowballed here.
Exactly, and that's why I think about it this way when it comes to each team. The Mets, it's only been a decade since they last went to the World Series. The Dodgers won last year, and it's coming on a decade for the Cubs. What each of these four teams has in common is they've had their rock bottom seasons, but they haven't been fairly recent for the most part. I know for Jesse's sake and everything else, over the last 20 years, that the Astros had reached the top in the 20-year period in 2005. But I remember them being so putrid that they got first-round pick after first-round pick after first-round pick for 3 seasons in a row. It wasn't a tank job. Not like now, where everybody just refuses to spend money and they let their talent just sit there. They don't even go get above replacement or at replacement value for these guys. Houston has done, besides the cheating scandals, the whole thing there. Besides that, Houston did it right. They did a rebuild. Biggio retired. Bagwell retired. Oswalt left for greener pastures in Philadelphia. Roger Clemens retired. Pettit went back to the Yankees. But what did they do? Prospects. They went and got prospects. That's exactly what they did. And that's just it about Houston. They've had great ownership. And Jesse will be back in a minute. But Houston has had a great time. They got Altuve, Correa. They had what's his name? Kyle Tucker, Bregman. They had all these guys, Framber Valdez, but the ownership was so great for them. It's not that they fell off so much as that's what happens when you invest in your future. And that's why I look at the Mets and what they have now. They've got a decent future ahead of them. The Mariners have their future now, and the Dodgers have a good farm system because they didn't go trading guys. They signed talent. You sign talent, and the Cubs have to do that. And Jesse, I know you had someone come in. I was talking about how great the Astros were for a moment here, but I'll let you have your time. I know you've been waiting.
Well, the Astros pretty much. They were in the dark age during the. Well, who was the owner? McLean.
Yeah.
And Jim Crane in 2011 came in and turned things around. And they were very, very innovative with that rebuild. Although the cheating scandal kind of, turned that into a shit show with, excuse my language.
That's okay. You're being accurate. That's okay.
But the way they rebuilt that team was very innovative with logistics. They had like a whole team come in and they brought like players in that were doing certain things that helped build that team to what it is today, even though they're not the same team they were from a couple of years ago. That's because, the Astros have gotten rid of certain players. They got rid of Kyle Tucker, and then they got rid of they let Bregman walk.
He's now with Boston, so it's Bregman. They still have pieces there. They let Gurriel go as well. He's bounded around from Miami to KC now.
Yeah.
Alvarez is going to be the biggest one. It's going to be the hardest one to get rid of, I think, because he can only DH. He could play a decent left field, but he can only really DH with his. Well, he's a large-bodied individual. He's not Devers per se, but
he's a big man with medium speed, and he could hit home runs. But other than that, I don't see him, getting the Astros getting rid of him anytime soon.
The number one thing right now is for the Astros. I know they've had a lot of talent, but for their future ahead, do you think they have enough prospects because I know the teams above here do, but I know Houston's kind of in that dumbed down phase where that decade has come and gone where they've had their prospects come up and everything else, but they still have the players that got them there. Do you think the ownership is going to keep them afloat?
I think the ownership should stop trading away their prospects for like players who are like they always trade they traded Abraham Turo, who was good. They traded away a lot of players to Chicago, like Corey Lee. They had all these up and coming talent. I mean, they did really good with with getting a replacement for Carlos Correa.
Pena has been decent. He won Rookie of the Year, but Houston's kind of in that one trouble zone where they have to, because this is a reverse of kind of Chicago, the Mets, and the Dodgers and everything, where you can't trade away what you don't have. Because that's why a guy like Altuve, and I know he's had an up and down year so far through 62 games, they need an actual, and I say this very nicely, an actual outfielder. Not Alvarez playing left because he's not the fastest. You would need a guy that has Alvarez's size and arm, but Altuve's speed out there. And that was what Kyle Tucker was before they let him go.
Yeah.
That's just what I think.
That was stupid.
And that's just it. Each one of these guys has talked about ownership and everything else, and what the ups and downs of it is. I know we went a little bit differently with today's show. I don't know how they felt about it, and I hope they like the topics a little bit. But I appreciate them all being on here on a Wednesday. I know we normally do Thursdays, but thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Josh. And thank you, Jesse. Thank you all for hearing me out on this a little bit. I know you guys got to talk about your teams a little bit, but next time I'll make sure that we're able to talk more about teams individually. But I just like talking about the business side of things where those guys, not so much the guys with the glasses, that'd be rude to say, but the guys who don't know enough about baseball, the ones who haven't played the game ever. They don't know about the physical and mental side of it, the injuries and everything, durability, what it's going to take to keep these guys on the field, and that's why they're up in the front office and they're not playing the game right now. But I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you again. And remember, baseball is supposed to be a fun game. It's not always going to be about numbers, but unfortunately, the players don't always think about the fans anymore, and that's kind of where things have gotten. But again, I appreciate your guys' time, and thank you for watching the Weekly Baseball Rundown. These guys, they're real good. They really know their stuff. Have a good night, everybody.